Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I see that we do have our special guest, Dr. Radcliffe, on the Zoom. So I'll just give a quick introduction of myself, and then she can begin to share her screen and we can get started. So welcome to Parenting in a Pandemic presented by We Lead. I'm Tiana Hughes, the Secretary of We Lead, and this will count for a talent management training. So if you all can begin to put your first and last name in the chat, I'll be taking roll that way. And that's all the announcements I have. So Dr. Radcliffe, if you're ready, you may begin.
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, let's see here. Oh, gonna move this bar so I can. There we go. All right. Let's see. Let me get this Zoom bar out of my way. Okay. Hello, I'm really happy to be here and glad to be talking about this topic that I have, for personal and professional reasons, spent a lot of time thinking about over the last couple of years. My name is Chelsea Ratcliffe. I'm an assistant professor of psychology here at St. Houston State University. I've been here for about 5 years. And most of the stuff that I research has to do with managing stress and improving wellness for people who are diagnosed with chronic health conditions like cancer and things like that. But over the past 2 years, I have, as a parent, certainly been interested in how to survive and maybe even get closer to thriving during this, people keep saying unprecedented time, but during what has been quite a challenging time. So just to get a little of maybe credibility, here are my 2 daughters on a good day. And here are my 2 daughters on what lots of the time looks like. And so you may have on your own phone camera rolls, like 90% of the moments, where they're smiling captured. But I do kind of hope you snap some pictures to just remind yourself of the full spectrum of what parenting looks like during a pandemic, but always, actually. All right, so as I was preparing to talk today, I was kind of going back through and looking at what some of the news media has said over the last couple of years about this bizarre time when people have tried to work from home and parent from home and teach their kids sometimes from home. The headlines are, can really perhaps make you feel seen, especially the version of you that was kind of getting through 2020, if your experience was anything like mine. So this one from Forbes: moms are not okay. Pandemic triples anxiety and depression symptoms in new mothers. Working moms are not okay. An article coming out a few months later. This is too much. Working moms are reaching the breaking point during the pandemic. And in fact, the New York Times has created a newsletter called the Primal Scream, like LOL, that has like all articles written about this very topic. Moms who are, average moms who are experiencing crisis and are kind of reporting on the really precarious balance that we've all been in for a long time. And the pandemic laid bare some of the impossible things that moms, and this is about working moms, have been asked to do. And then more recently, this was an article from just a couple of months ago: COVID parenting has passed the point of absurdity. I have to be honest, as I was reading through these articles, I took a moment it made me tear up, truly, thinking back about what we have all been through. We have all people, but especially this community of parents and moms in particular that have weathered such a storm over the last 2 years, trying to care for our kids, keep them safe, and keep them sane. It felt overwhelming. It's like we've all pushed ourselves along and perhaps have not had a chance to really reflect back on what we have gone through. There have been so many stressors, impossible choices that we've had to make in terms of our time, in terms of caring for kids who are out of school, who have inconsistent childcare. I mean, even recently, there have still been instances of childcare facilities closing down due to quarantine, things like that. Things are looking better, but these are certainly not all the way back to normal. Moms are twice as likely as dads to report that they feel concerned that their work performance is being negatively evaluated because of their childcare responsibilities. So like that picture in the top left really might kind of hit home a little bit there. And parents have also faced material hardships. So 1 in 4 families during the past couple of years have faced food insecurity or difficulty paying for housing. And that number really varies based on racial or ethnic background. So as many as 48% of Black mothers surveyed said that in the year 2020, they experienced difficulty paying for food and housing, these basic necessities as a result of the pandemic. On top of all of that, we've tried to figure out how to let our kids socialize, how to stay in touch with relatives and friends. It has been really hard. The consequences of pandemic stress are unfortunately basically the consequences of just any chronic stressor. Our bodies pretty much do the same thing no matter what the type of stress is that we're faced with. So we kind of kick into gear into this fight or flight approach to things. And that can be really helpful. Like the reason we evolved in that way is so that we could like have the energy to run away from a saber-toothed tiger or a bear or whatever. And now in weird freak situations where you're faced with an acute stressor, you have the bizarre power to like lift a vehicle off of a kid or something like that. That's very helpful on these like short-term stressors. But unfortunately, that's not, well, maybe fortunately, I don't want to be faced with a situation like that very often, but most of the time we have chronic stressors. And certainly that's been the case during the pandemic, this like ever going, sticking around forever stressors of balancing it all. And in those kinds of situations, our bodies are really not doing us any favors. So having the fight or flight system kicked on for days, weeks, months, years takes a toll, right? That's not how it was designed to be. And so it takes a toll mentally and physically. So during June of 2020, 40% of adults reported struggling with mental health or substance abuse. And that's up quite a bit. Like estimates are around 3 times as much as typical at any given moment, like before the pandemic. And we saw from that earlier article that in fact, new moms were indeed reporting anxiety and depression 3 times higher than new moms surveyed before the pandemic. You don't need to look at surveys of other people probably to know that the pandemic has taken a toll on moms and dad, like on parents' mental health. It's also taken a toll on physical health. So these are parents surveyed during the pandemic, and close to 70% of moms were reporting having experienced a health problem as a result of the stress that they were experiencing due to the pandemic. And a similar 70% of moms reported feeling overwhelmed. Over half reported significant symptoms of depression, and almost everybody, 85% of moms reported not getting enough sleep. These numbers are high in the fathers surveyed as well, but you can see not quite as high. So again, it's takes a toll on our bodies and our minds. It also takes a toll on our kids. Caregiver burden, these are all surveys that have been done during the pandemic, leads to more parent-child conflict and less closeness. This is among a sample of parents of adolescents. Parent stress and anxiety and depression also increases the risk that their kids have those same symptoms of anxiety and depression as well. And then I'm sure you probably have heard on the news and whatnot that child abuse is estimated to have increased by 3 times as much during the pandemic. And you can really see those elevated numbers during times when stay-at-home orders were in place, which was, of course, much more common early in the pandemic. But like I said, even still, now we have bouts of kids being at home much more than they used to be. So that's not good. You probably didn't need me to tell you that it's been not so good for the last while. And you may be thinking like, this isn't going to be about self-care. Like you should take a bath, you should get a massage, you should start meditating. And being a parent and a parent of little kids, this is not something that I have time for. If I had time to take a nice bath, I obviously would do that. I don't need someone else to tell me to do that. That's not what I'm talking about. If we had to wait until we had time to practice these kind of self-care activities, they might not ever happen. And also what we certainly don't want to do is send the message that you need to add yet another thing to your to-do list. Nobody wants that. Instead, what I'm going to talk about today are ways that we can shift our perspective in tiny moments. Sometimes people call them like kernels, like these little tiny moments, shifting our perspective. And that can lead to pretty big results, pretty big impact on the overall picture. And I'm going to talk about 3 different ways to shift our perspective. And these are 3 ways that have received a lot of attention in the research, but they're also, the other reason I wanted to touch on them is that they're things that I have really learned a lot more about for myself in the last couple of years and have found them to be helpful. Okay, so I'm going to talk about mindfulness, which maybe folks already know a little bit about that, but we'll just touch on that a bit. I'll talk about gratitude, and I'll talk about self-compassion. And we're going to have a chance throughout, I'm going to keep an eye on the time, but we'll have a chance throughout to just very briefly practice kind of shifting our perspective in these 3 ways throughout our time together. So first, let's talk briefly about mindfulness, which is all about like being here in this present moment now. Over the course of your day, what percentage of the time are you right here, right now, like in this present moment, in the present moment, versus time traveling, meaning like your body is here, but your mind is elsewhere. Another phrase people have said is like, the lights are on, but nobody's home, right? So you could be pulled somewhere towards the future, thinking about what you need to do. Even now, maybe you're like, what I need to do next, what I'm going to eat for lunch, whatever. Or you're pulled towards the past of like, oh, I forgot to drop that off, blah, 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 whatever. Versus just being here now. I'm going to give you a minute to think about that. Where are you most of the time? If this was like in person, you could just shout it out, but Zoom is confusing. People are always stepping on each other's words, but I'm going to wager that not that much of the time are we here in this present moment. There is a lot going on up here that has nothing to do with right now, right? So mindfulness is basically an effort, like putting forth purposeful effort to draw ourselves out of this kind of like what I think of as like a thought tornado, like what this guy is having, of thoughts about the future, thoughts about the past, whatever, and just getting here now, even for a moment. That's what mindfulness is all about. Getting here now in the way that this dog is on his walk, right? He's just on his walk. He's not thinking about anything else. He's just taking it in for what it is. He also is not having like evaluations of like, oh, it's a little too humid for me today. I don't like that. Or like, you know, I think it might rain later. He's here now, right? Even for just a moment. So mindfulness means bringing our awareness to the here and now with a sense of openness and curiosity, like as opposed to judgment. And there's 2 main reasons why, you know, it makes sense to be like, why would you want to do that? Why would that be useful? And for me, there's 2 main reasons. So one is that I don't want to miss my life, basically. I mean, this life is kind of hard, I'm not going to lie, but I'd rather see it than completely not see it. And also, when we take those minutes to kind of like get off autopilot, we can be more intentional about what we're doing, right? We can really notice what our kid is saying to us. We can really notice how we're talking to our kid. You know, there's been a few times where my older daughter is like, you know, take a picture of me, take a picture of me. And I'm thinking she's saying that because she's like, I know you want to look at your phone, but like, look at me. Like, why don't you use it to look at me? And her saying that, it's like a real wake up call of like, what am I doing? You know, there are times when it's like, I'm just kind of pointlessly not here. So it allows us to be more intentional, to get ourselves off that autopilot. So being mindful doesn't necessarily mean like sitting and meditating, carving out 10 minutes a day, although that is helpful. But the thing that's kind of more practical for me, at least, and for many others, is to simply bring your full attention to a task you already have to do. That could be something like washing dishes, giving a bath to yourself or your offspring, making lunches. And to me, I felt like the tasks that are the most I begrudge the most, it can be the most powerful to really turn my senses on and really engage in it, right? So I don't know about you, but or if you have to make lunches, I don't know why. It takes like 10 minutes and it's like the worst 10 minutes of my day. I'm so annoyed. It's like you come through the whole day and then, oof, you got to do that extra thing. And so recently I have really tried to like be aware of the feeling of the fruit that I'm cutting or the bread that I'm putting peanut butter on, to really pay attention to it. And it brings a sense of vitality to that experience. And it also kind of gets me in touch with why I'm doing this, because I care, because I love my kids and they need to eat something. Yeah, so it can kind of like tone down the begrudgedness of all the stuff we have to do and highlight the vitality in each kind of aspect of our life. Okay, and again, these are ways that we can kind of incorporate this into what we're already doing. So I just want to highlight here a couple of research findings related to this. So several studies have looked at mindfulness interventions in parents, and they found pretty promising results. So here you can see, this is the results of a 12-week mindfulness group intervention for recently divorced parents of preschoolers. So these are folks that are particularly high risk for stress. And of course, stressed parents aren't always parenting at our best. So you can see they had an increase in mindfulness after these 12 weeks. They had a decrease in distress. But I think pretty interesting is that they also had a decrease in negative parenting behaviors that the researchers were observing. So they'd like put them in an observation room and like code the stuff they were saying to their kids. And then the same thing was found actually for a group half as long, a 6-week virtual group intervention for parents of adolescents with autism. So increases in mindfulness, increases in self-compassion, which I'll talk about in a second, and then decreases in depression and anxiety. An 8-week group intervention for parents of adolescents found similar results. And this was compared to an education control group. So it was like a little bit more of a robust study design where half of the parents were randomly assigned to an 8-week intervention about mindfulness, and then half just got like information about it, education about parenting, basically. So you can see that mindfulness increased for those in the mindfulness group. That's good. Relationship quality also increased as self-reported by the parents. And then they also observed the parents and the adolescents like basically discussing, AKA arguing, about a high conflict topic. And they found that after the intervention, parents had much less negative emotional responses. So instead of like kind of coming unhinged or flying off the handle at their adolescent, they had much less of that after the intervention. Okay, so let's just try it. We're going to just do like a little 3-minute mindfulness exercise. And what I'd like for us to do is, if possible, I know most of you guys are like probably at a work desk or something like that. And I'm thinking that you might have something to drink, like a water or something like that nearby. Do folks have that? I can't see everybody, but yeah, people. Okay, I'm seeing a couple waters. Okay, water. Let's try that. All right. So we're going to just practice mindfulness of taking a drink of water. Okay. And remember, why are we doing this? How is drinking a drink of water have anything to do with anything? It's just a little practice exercise. It's kind of like going to the gym is a way to get to like being a better soccer player or whatever. It's a practice. Noticing this right now, moment by moment experience of our inside stuff, like our thoughts and feelings, or outside stuff, like the sensation of water in your mouth, pulls you out of that thought tornado where you're thinking about the past, thinking about the future, and gets us right here. And this is where life is happening. That also lets us act. Once we're kind of getting more practice at that, we can bring our attention to, I'm seeing folks like, there's like, oh, now that you mention it, I'm thirsty. Okay. Anyways, brings our awareness to what we're doing. And that gives us a little bit more autonomy. Like rather than being on autopilot, we can choose what we want to do. We can act in a way that lines up with what's important to us, act in a way that we mean to, instead of kind of like reacting. Okay, so let's practice being here now. Go ahead and get whatever your drink is, or if you don't have a drink, maybe a snack or a stick of gum, something like that. And just first of all, let's just get in this minute for a moment. Just go ahead and settle into your chair. Go ahead and pause. Let yourself breathe just how you are normally breathing. And just really turn your attention, your full attention, to one breath as it goes in and out. Letting yourself settle right here in this moment, unhooking from all those thoughts that were storming around up here. And now that we're here in this moment, go ahead and grab whatever beverage you have, or maybe snack. And first, just look at it. Just notice what it looks like, the colors of the bottle. Just take it in. You're getting off autopilot and you're really seeing. You're seeing it like a baby would see it, or like a scientist that's never seen this color would see it. Just noticing the texture of the bottle. Sorry about that. And now go ahead and take a sip, but don't swallow it yet. Just notice how it feels in your mouth, swishing it around. Notice the temperature, the flavor. You can notice the sound of my dog barking as well. And now swallow and just feel how you can track it going down your throat. All the sensations associated with that. Seeing if you can turn your attention towards that. Notice whatever aftertaste might be left in your mouth.
I'm sorry.
All right. Sorry about that. She's defending the house against the mailman. It's actually not my dog. It's my parents' dog. I'm trying to do a nice thing. This is my reward. Okay. Anyways. All right. So we can come back to our time together. And ideally, I'd like to hear how you felt about that experience, but I know it's kind of tricky in this format. But hopefully it's just an idea of one small, like I'm talking about, one little kernel shifting perspective and getting us in this moment. And you can imagine how practicing this little shift throughout your day can impact your life in a bigger way, can create patterns, such as shifting your focus even just for a moment on the people in your life that matter the most to you, the things in your life that matter the most to you. This is kind of a way of practicing that. There's lots of apps that kind of talk you through paying attention to things like what you're eating or drinking, but also to your breath and how your body feels and things like that. So if you haven't already checked these out, I think they're quite useful. The one that I most strongly recommend is Insight Timer because it's the most free, but they're all nice. Okay, let's talk about gratitude briefly. So gratitude doesn't need too much of an introduction. And the reason why I wanted to talk about it is that during the darkest days of the pandemic, so I'll just mention I had my second daughter on March 15th, 2020, which was just right about the same day that it was declared that it was a global pandemic. So it was a kind of a dicey first few months there. And my husband and I started to purposefully say one thing we were thankful for each day at dinner. And it really helped me. I was not expecting, I wasn't realizing, I don't think, like how much worry I was constantly like spewing out. And it really helped to kind of get a little bit, shift my perspective, even just for that one. It's not like we did anything else related to this. That's all we did was say one thing we were thankful for. And it had a big impact on me. And so because of that, I'm actually running a study right now. I developed a study with Dr. Hilary Langley, who's also a assistant professor in the Department of Psychology. So we're looking at a mindfulness and a gratitude intervention using apps for parents who are reporting elevated distress during the pandemic. If you want to participate, you can let me know. But anyway, so we're asking parents to keep a list of 3 things that are that they're grateful for each day, just for 2 weeks. And the reason we picked 2 weeks is because several studies have looked at 2-week, very short gratitude list intervention. So basically like writing 3 things you're thankful for. And they found pretty cool results. So I just want to highlight here that, so like in the dark bar are the gratitude intervention folks, the people who wrote 3 things down per day for 2 weeks. And in the white bar is the placebo control. I think they wrote like what they ate that day for 2 weeks. And 6 months later, like 6 months after they did that 2-week gratitude list, folks were reporting more happiness compared to the control and much less depression. You can see down here in the black bar compared to the control. So it's like a really short intervention with a major impact on happiness and depression moving forward. Another common intervention, a gratitude related intervention, is to write and deliver a gratitude letter. So a letter to somebody that you feel grateful toward. There were similar findings there. So people who participated in the gratitude letter intervention reported more happiness and less depression compared to the placebo a full month after delivering their letter. So again, pretty like low effort interventions with some marked impacts long-term. Okay, so let's try that one. If you guys wouldn't mind, I'm going to give you a few minutes for you to just take a moment now and jot down, like really with your hand on paper or in your computer somewhere, like actually write down 3 things that you're grateful for today. All right. And I can see even some folks, a smile coming to your face. When you think about things we're thankful for, it's shocking like how something so simple can have such a positive impact. So I encourage you to consider just making a mental note of 3 things you're thankful for the next week or so and see what happens. Another thing to consider is who might, not that you have time like right this second to write a gratitude letter, but think about now who you might want to write a gratitude letter to. Okay, I'm going to give you another minute to write that person's name down. All right, so in the coming weeks, think about if you want to actually do that, write a gratitude letter and deliver it. These are low effort, low time commitment, but can have a big impact on our mental health. Oh, there's also an app, but this is the app we're using in that study that just prompts you to write down 3 things you're thankful for. And it's free for 2 weeks, so that's kind of not ideal, but you know, maybe 2 weeks is all you need to kind of get a habit of thinking about that. Okay, last but not least, I wanted to talk about the idea of self-compassion. This is not really something I was terribly familiar with before the last couple of years. And honestly, like doing reading about what has been helpful for parents has made me more aware of this. I've really appreciated that. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the term mom guilt or parent guilt. not moms are not the only ones that feel guilty. We often are our own harshest critic. We bully ourselves with thoughts like you're not good enough, or you're not fit to do this, or you're failing as a mom or a parent. These are things that we would never say to another person, but that we hurl at ourselves on a pretty regular basis, actually. And those criticisms can really get us down. Self-compassion means talking to ourselves in a different way. It means being kind and understanding of ourselves when we are confronted with personal failings. So it's not about self-esteem. Like self-esteem is like contingent on performing, or like contingent on being better than average, like feeling like you're better than average. So if we all are supposed to feel like we're better than average, like there's a problem. You know what I mean? It's like woebegone, like where all the children are above average. Okay, so self-compassion is not about that. It's not like feeling good about yourself because you're better than average. It's about being compassionate and kind to ourselves because we're human. So there's three kind of components to self-compassion. The person that writes the most about this, her name is Kristen Neff, and she has a really nice website called selfcompassion.org. But I'm going to just talk you through these like kind of three elements of it. So the first is mindfulness. It's hard for us to extend compassion towards ourselves or kindness towards ourselves when we're like in denial of how we're feeling, or like when we're like whipped up in that tornado and we have no clue what's going on with us right here and now. So mindfulness is all about like, what am I feeling right now? Just kind of checking in with yourself. And then the second part of that is like, can we make space for what we're feeling right now? Not to be like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling guilty. I'm feeling shame. I'm feeling sad. Like, that's not good. Like, how do I get that feeling out of here? It's like, that's a part of being human. So can we kind of allow ourselves to feel that in this moment? Allow ourselves to feel that in this moment and extend kindness to ourselves in what might be a moment of pain or a moment of suffering or a moment of anxiety, a moment of uncertainty. So one thing to think about is what words of kindness can I give the criticized part of myself? And then I think equally important, thinking about what words of kindness does the critical part of myself need to hear? So think for a moment about whatever has happened, a time recently where you might have felt a bit of, well, you know what, I'm going to ask you to do this in just a moment. But basically, you can acknowledge that when we're hard on ourselves, we are the ones being hard on ourselves. You know what I mean? Like there's a part of you that's criticizing yourself, and then there's a part of you that's getting beaten up by yourself. And self-compassion is about showing kindness, saying kind of self-talk, saying kind things to both of those parts of yourself. For example, the criticized part of you might be afraid of failure, might be scared that if you don't talk like this, you're not going to succeed or get better. So offering some kindness around that. And then last is this acknowledgement of connectedness, of what they sometimes call common humanity. So it's kind of crazy that like when we fail, when we mess up, we feel isolated, right? We feel like, oh my, I'm the only one that could ever do. Like recently, okay, this is a really small example, but I completely forgot it was picture day. I don't even think I brushed my daughter's hair. I didn't even think about it. I sent her to school. She's wearing like a graphic tee from Target. And this is going to be memorialized in her, probably in her yearbook. Oh my gosh. And so I was not feeling good about this. And it felt like, I was like, I can't even tell any, like, I don't even want to tell anyone about this. Like, it felt like, oh my gosh, I'm the only one that has done this thing to my kid, blah, 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 all the negative things we say to ourselves. And what's shocking, like what's so, to me, so powerful about this idea of connectedness is that actually the main thing that we all have in common is that we're not perfect. Like, that's the whole thing about being human. It's weird that as humans, we feel like when we are imperfect, we're like cut off from the group. But actually, that's the most unifying feature of us as humans, is that we all fail. So this part of self-compassion is recognizing that we all fail. We all mess up. That's part of being human. Nobody said you were going to be perfect, and no one has asked you to be perfect. And that is a relief. Okay, so one thing that often I think comes up for folks because of our society or whatever is that self-criticism is viewed as somehow like useful. Like, don't we need self-criticism to like improve? And the answer is basically no. We're mammals, and mammals do our best. There's lots of animal and human studies that show that performance is optimized. People do their best when they feel safe and comfortable. That's the way we work. So you can think about these two examples. Like in one, a son comes home and he has a not so good grade on his math test, and a dad is harshly criticizing him, right? Or you can think of a mom, whatever. A parent is harshly criticizing him, like, you should have studied harder. You could be better than this, like blah, 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 hurling these insults at this little kid. And then we have another possibility, right? A kid doesn't do so well on his math exam, comes home, and he's comforted by his parent. Like, oh man, buddy, I know that must have been disappointing. Yeah, that doesn't feel so good. We can think about how to do better next time. But I know that this hurts right now. And think about which kid is going to be more likely to strive in math, to go on and like voluntarily do well in that subject, right? We do better when we feel safe and comforted. We can do that to ourselves, right? Do we want to be this dad who's like hurling all these criticisms at this little part of us that just keeps getting beaten up? Or we can be this dad or mom who's comforting that part of us that is imperfect, that is broken, saying, I know that hurts. Like, I know we're going to get through this. And so this is a meta-analysis. So it's like a study that combined the results of lots of studies, of 13 studies of self-compassion interventions. And these interventions range from like 2 weeks to 8 weeks. Most of them were 8 weeks. And they like teach different exercises to increase this kind of self-talk that's kind and recognizing our humanity, common humanity. And the results here, these are like standardized results. So folks had an increase in self-compassion after the intervention, increase in mindfulness, they kind of go hand in hand, decreases in depression, anxiety, and stress. And then some of the studies had shame as an outcome, which I thought was really interesting. And, unsurprisingly, shame also is decreased significantly after the intervention. Okay, so let's try it. And then we'll have time to kind of discuss. I'd like to hear from you guys what you think about it and what's been helpful. But first, let's go ahead and give this a try. Okay, so go ahead and get into a comfortable position where your back is probably upright and alert, but relaxed. And bring to mind something that you're struggling with. Take a moment to reflect on what happened. Maybe a disagreement with a partner or a kid, something difficult that's happened at work or at home. Get that moment in your mind or that difficulty. Think about who said what, how it is affecting you. And notice the difficult feelings and thoughts that show up. The things you're saying to yourself. Pick up one of your hands and imagine that it's the hand of someone very kind and caring. Place this hand slowly and gently on whichever part of your body hurts the most. Perhaps you feel it in your chest or your head, neck, or your stomach. Wherever it is the most intense, let your hand lay there. Allow your hand to rest there, lightly and gently. Feel it against your skin or clothes. Feel the warmth flowing from your palm into your body. Now imagine your body is softening around this pain, loosening up, softening, and making space. If you're numb, then soften and loosen around that numbness. Hold your pain or numbness gently. Hold it as if it is a crying baby or a whimpering puppy or a priceless work of art. Infuse this gentle action with caring and warmth. Let the kindness flow from your fingers into your body. Now use both hands in one kind gesture. Place one hand on your chest and the other on your stomach. And let them rest gently there as you hold yourself kindly. Connect with yourself and care for yourself. Breathe in. Take this spirit of kindness towards yourself into your day. All right, you can give your body a little stretch as we kind of come back together. I'd like to hear from you guys about how these exercises went. And so now we'll kind of switch over into some time to hear from you. I did just want to mention, I think I said this before, there's lots of different self-compassion exercises that you can listen to or read at this website, selfcompassion.org. So think about what resonated with you. We talked about being here now, that quality of mindfulness, like fully turning your attention toward something you're doing, or it could be your breath or body. We talked about gratitude, kind of keeping a gratitude journal, and showing yourself compassion. All right. So I wanted to just turn it over for questions or comments. It could also be things that you have found particularly helpful for your own mental well-being during the last 2 months, but thank you guys.
So Dr. Radcliffe,
Yes.
I'm really big on the gratitude thing. Me, my husband, and my daughter, every night we do a gratitude circle. And we talk about 3 things that we were grateful for that day. So it's a way to kind of get her in that mindset, because I tell her our brains are wired to notice the bad stuff, not the good stuff. So it's been really amazing. Now she brings it up, and if we are not doing it, she's like, whoa, where's our blessing circle? She wants to do that. So it's been really helpful.
Yeah, that's great to hear. That's great to hear. We started doing that when my daughter was really little, like my older daughter was like really little, but it would be a good idea to bring it back now that she's, old enough to get what we're doing. That's a really nice point. What about for other folks? Any things that you have found helpful in keeping your sanity over the last couple of years, or anything that we talked about today that kind of resonated in particular?
We have some comments.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes. I need to remember the chat is a thing.
No problem. Lisa Chadwick says, I need to spend time in nature or in my garden.
Yes, yes. That's such a good, yeah. I was just hearing on the radio the other day, they were talking about nature and what a big impact that has on folks' mental well-being, and that's really become important to people during the pandemic.
We have Natalie. She can't use her mic, but being outside in the sunshine, prayer, and going to church.
Yeah. Yes, being outside in the sunshine is very helpful. That's been a little easier. That was easier earlier on when there was like a little bit more flexibility in where we were. Yeah, trying to take, I'm seeing a comment from Chelsea, trying to take walks outside without technology. That's a good point. I've even started I'm definitely not like the model citizen for these things I just talked about. So I'm like, trying and failing somewhat, but I've noticed like when I brush my teeth, I have this timer. So it's like 2 minutes. And normally I spend those 2 minutes just basically mindlessly scrolling my phone. But I have recently tried to not do that. And it's just 2 minutes where I'm trying to just be there, as opposed to distracting myself.
Have any ideas for new moms? Any ideas for new moms?
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff out there for new moms. So there was actually several different studies related to self-compassion for moms who are struggling with breastfeeding. There's so much negative self-talk for a lot of people in that situation. And also it's obviously such an isolating time. It can be really hard to feel connected to other people. Yeah, I think some of that stuff, like practicing self-compassion, there's another exercise that's called like a self-compassion break. That's like 3 minutes. It's on that website. And I almost led us through it today, but basically it's like recognizing this is a moment of suffering, and acknowledging that this is a part of being human. Like I'm not the only one that feels this way. This is a really difficult situation. And then saying something kind to ourselves. Like one example that I've heard people say is like a little like sweetheart, like what you would say to somebody else that was in that situation. I mean, that sounds, I feel like self-talk can sound kind of trite when you're faced with something so challenging as being a new mom. But it can be helpful. Okay, cool. There's a lot of stuff in this comments here. Let's see here. Yeah, so, okay, I'm going to go back up. So Jennifer mentioned the mindfulness of everyday activities was helpful. And yeah, I have just found that I cannot regularly set up a time to, I know I should, but set up a time to like meditate, so to speak. So that's been helpful to me. Yeah, mentioning about prayer and silent retreats. Oh yeah, being mindful during the shower, for example. Yeah, that's a place you have to be. You got to be there anyways. So we can use it maybe as a time to like get our mind, give our mind a break from being tossed around in the tornado. Yeah, for new moms, yes, it's a really, even not pandemic or no, it's a really tough time, but you'll get through it. It's not forever. I think the nice thing about mindfulness too is that part of it is acknowledging like everything is impermanent. It sounds kind of hokey pokey, but like everything is impermanent, right? So like it can feel like we're in a hole of suffering and we're just going to be there forever. And we know that, things are fluid. It won't be like that forever. Let's see here. So, oh yeah, hearing nobody ask you to be perfect. I got to say, I listened to Kristen Neff has a TED talk about self-compassion, which I was watching to prepare for this. Actually, it doesn't matter, whatever. I was watching it to prepare for something similar to this. And when she said no one asked you to be perfect, I was like, waterworks, I like really needed to hear that. I talk about this stuff regularly, and still it can be so powerful to hear that, this is a standard that you made up, that you don't have to hold yourself to. I'm seeing like reframe from have to versus get to. Oh yeah, along the lines. Okay, so yeah, incorporating gratitude. Okay, yeah. Sierra's saying try to be more intentional with others. Yeah, celebrating more birthdays, more personal victories. That's such a good point. Yeah, even little things, right? And kids do this so well, right? They're such a good example of like being so pumped about whatever, their soccer practice or whatever. It's like everything feels like a big deal. Oh, this is a good a 1,000 hours outside challenge. I have not heard about this. Interesting. I'll have to look into that Natalie mentioned. Yeah, checking in with coworkers is a good idea. We're meant to live together in commune, and this last bit has been difficult, more difficult than usual to do that. So yeah, social support has been, will continue to be such an important part of momming and being a person in general. Meditation for 30 minutes. That's a good idea. That can really change your life. Okay, some names here. Oh yeah, okay. So, Susan, hello. The GLAD technique. One thing grateful for, one thing I learned that day, one thing I accomplished, and one thing I delight in. Ooh, the delight in is a good one. That's thought like kind of coming up with this like delight that it doesn't have to be for any purpose, and that it can be pretty simple, like whatever, dark chocolate chips, something like that you're already having in your life anyway. Yeah, this picture of them in this like little blanket. I wanted to put it up there because you can see it's just so, you can kind of see, and if I didn't crop it, you could really see it's like in the middle of quite a messy room, which is in the middle of quite a messy house. And so, yeah, kind of trying to put that aside and focus on this moment. Oh, good. I'm going to check it out. The 1,000 hours outside challenge. I'm going to look at this. Positive affirmations with my oldest son, who is 7, every morning, because the pandemic is tough on kiddos too. And it definitely helps our day get started right. That is such a good point. Oh yeah, please drop the apps you mentioned earlier for mindfulness. Yes, let me put it to everyone. Yeah, and Tanisha, if there's any positive affirmations in particular that you find helpful, you feel free to share them. Oh yeah, insight timer, like you mentioned. Calm, headspace. And then there's one called grateful. That's what it's called. Yeah. Oh, smiling mind. That's another good one. Mowing in the spring, and also taking a hot bath, big stress relievers. Yes, for sure. For sure. Mowing in the spring, I can't say that I agree with that one. That sounds pretty awful to me. My husband stole it. Wow. I mean, that is really something. All right. Any other questions or things that have been helpful or anything like that? You can use the chat, or you can chime in.
Actually, just wanted to ask a quick question. We have a baby coming in April, and I'm planning to be out. We're both going to be out for kind of the full 12 weeks. Is there anything that you guys think that would really help us kind of in that time to, not get overly stressed and just kind of really come together? I know it's hard, and, I've already heard the jokes, sleep now while you can, but, is there anything you guys suggest?
What a great question. What a nice thought going into it. I'll just say my own experience. The most helpful thing for me was trying to have extremely low expectations. And for the second time around, like when we had our second kid, it was much easier to do that and to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like I was mentioning, like, the current present moment is impermanent and it will shift and change. And that is really what ended up being really important for me to hang on to. And I really believed it the second time. The first time I was like, oh my gosh, I ruined my life. Like, why did I do this? We were so happy. And then, and then it got much better. So those first few weeks are so hard and they're impermanent, but it looks like there's lots of other comments coming in. Let's see here. Oh, accept help. Lots of people saying, accept help. So true. So true. I just recently had this morning, I have a friend who basically, reached out for help, shared with me that her husband had to go on a business trip and she has a 3-week-old and she needs help getting her older daughter to and from school. And I'm like, of course, I'm happy to do that. But I would have never known that that her husband was out of town. So yeah, I think piping up when you need help is really helpful.
I just want to say thank you, Dr. Radcliffe, and everybody for the wonderful comments. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Yeah, grace for yourself, low expectations. Those are good ones. Those are good ones.
Do you have any more questions before we log off for Dr. Radcliffe or any other moms or dads on the line?
I just want to echo what Sierra said. A major congratulations to all new parents and to all parents who have, continued to push through and do some really difficult stuff over the last couple of years. I hope that you guys, I hope this serves as a reminder for all of us to just take a minute and give ourselves a little kindness and honestly, a little pat on the back. We're here. Our kids are here. So thank you guys.
Well, thank you, Dr. Radcliffe, for this awesome presentation. I'm sure everyone can take something back and implement it into their daily lives as a parent. So on behalf of We Lead, thanks for joining us, and we hope to have you back. A little round of applause for you. And again, if you have not put your name in the chat for attendance, please do so. I should have everything in talent management by the end of the week. All right. Thanks, everyone. You all have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.